In this video, we are talking about holographic AI Walt Disney. Walt Disney has returned. We have so many thoughts on this. Up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. I have a fantastic panel with me today. I got my brothers, my collaborators, Dre and George, the family man. Now we're going to start off with Mr. Vash Sky, Dr. Dre, host of Freshly Squeezed. Dre, if you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, my friend.
Hey, best place to find me is going to be at Vash Sky on Twitter. It's right down there. I know Twitter's been having some problems lately, but if you can go ahead and give that a follow. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel we're watching right now at Orange Grove 55. We have some amazing shows also in the pipeline for sure, but you can also see mine there at, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
There we go. And down below, we got George, the Disney Family Man 23. George, welcome back, brother. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter, hopefully, at Disney George. You can check me out on the new podcast, A Walk with Walt. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Pay attention, it's Joe time.
There we go.
Then really quick before we begin, just to let all our listeners and viewers know, once again, if you would like a Disney 100 written card out to you by the OG 55 team, please. I'm going to actually say email Mr. Orange Grove 55 rather than message any of us on Twitter, just to be on the safe side if we even get it, So email the email's down below. So please, if you would like a card from the OG 55 team, please give an email with any of the characters that I had mentioned previously, and we will send one out to you.
Absolutely. Actually, we got one this morning. I forwarded it to you, George.
Yes.
So awesome stuff. Yeah. So just hit me up on that email address and we'll get a card out to you ASAP. All right, let's dive into today's topic, which is holographic AI Walt. Okay. This is very, very interesting. Dre, I'm going to go ahead and share your screen.
Please do.
Just a moment.
Please do. So this came to us initially via the New York Times, which is interesting, and I guess it's all about a new exhibit that's going to be opening at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, and it's going to be celebrating the Disney 100. And as part of this celebration, it says this: as part of its 100th anniversary marketing palooza, the Walt Disney Company used archival video and artificial intelligence tools to create a lifelike hologram of its founder, a full-size digital avatar that speaks in Walt's voice and appears as part of an interactive exhibition of Disney artwork, props, and costumes that will tour the globe until at least 2028. Quote, "I get goosebumps every time I see it," said Becky Klein, director of the Disney Archives. Yeah, 2028. Hundreds of thousands of people are expecting to buy tickets. That's a long time for this traveling show right here. You can see the exterior right there. This is a huge exhibit featuring just, if I'm mistaken, a catalog of thousands of different items and so forth. But as part of this exhibit, they introduced this. a kind of a hologram reproduction of Walt Disney utilizing AI. So we'll play a little bit of this here. Won't play the audio just in case. This comes to us via WDW News Today. Well, there he is.
This is interesting. Overall, I'm pretty impressed. Overall, I said it on Twitter. I think they're like 98% there. It looks really, really good. Now, there are some issues that I do have with it. He smiles way too much. Walt Disney never had like that big cheesy grin of a smile, and he does it too often in this. Also, some of the hand gestures. This whole thing, I don't know what that is. I don't know, right? That's not Walt Disney.
Right.
But look, I can nitpick it, but all this stuff is going to have some flaws to it. When they rolled out the Abraham Lincoln animatronic at Disneyland, it wasn't perfect. It's still not perfect. These things are going to have flaws to it. So I was kind of expecting that to be the case with this. Sure enough, that's what's going on. But overall, I think it's pretty cool. And utilizing this, this AI technology, I think there's a lot of potential here with this, and I think it's only going to get better. Now, I do have some concerns, which is basically putting quotes in Walt's mouth and going down that slippery slope, which I'm sure we'll talk about in depth here. But I'll go down the row. Dre, overall thoughts, how it looks, good, bad, concerns. What are your feelings, brother?
I echo your sentiments about some things that just don't quite look right. I think the hair. I think a lot of people were calling that out, and I had to concur with that. The thing that I saw initially was the mouth movements and so forth. A little bit too smiley, a little bit too. It just doesn't quite get the Waltisms 100% correct. Also the hands and so forth, the folds and his suit. It's almost like he's wearing like a silk suit. That's like a modern polyester, which is very different from what we saw him in the 60s and so forth. So there's like little things, right? There's little things that kind of take you out of it a little bit. Also, there were some audio syncing issues with his, mouth movements and so forth that were a little bit distracting. All those things will be ironed out, I think. By the way, audio sounds pretty good. Like it is right there. I did notice a little bit of digitization in some parts, but my ear is very sensitive. So, if you're just going in there, I mean, it really is going to take your breath away in terms of the audio front for sure. This is some very impressive technology, and you got to kind of think about, well, honestly, the implications of something like this, right? I mean, really, and it's, I think I think you made a great point about the kind of the connection to kind of Lincoln, right? When you take a historical figure and you reproduce him in this kind of modern context, there's some great implications there, and I think Walt handled that process well with the reverence he had for Lincoln, right? Cut up speeches that he had actually said in the past, and assembled a speech for Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln as it debuted in the 1964-65 World's Fair, and that was a good way to do it. Now here, as this kind of corporate founder and almost company mascot, it's kind of really interesting to reproduce a likeness of Walt to this degree of accuracy. And the implications are, wow, I mean, he could really kind of say anything and do anything, right? I mean, you could imagine this technology expanding. Maybe, hey, if you're in a room and you're seeing this, what if he actually scans your eye line and actually, looks directly at you, right? What if he actually uses your name or recognizes you upon seeing you again? I mean, the possibilities are endless. And you can see them debuting something like this at the parks on a regular basis, right? Maybe in the Opera House or even the One Man's Dream exhibit at Disney's Hollywood Studios. That the possibilities are endless, but I think a lot of people are kind of like, ooh, well, what does this mean? You could have him say anything you want, and that's got a lot of people very hesitant. But George, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to you. What do you think?
I'm going to start off with the positive before I get into my nitpicking. First off, the fact that they even thought of Walt to even do something like this on this scale, I applaud the Walt Disney Company, because we're starting to see a lot of Walt being implemented back into the company, because there was a period of time where we weren't seeing anything, not even the mention of his name, and it was like, and I also had a big problem when they would show the Disney feature films or animation where they would have the logo and they just called it Disney instead of Walt Disney Pictures. That, to this very day, that still kind of gripes me, but I digress. Now, as far as the overall aesthetics of him, I felt like they made him a little bit too animated. I felt like that he's a little bit too bubblegum is what I like. I use that term, like very, very uppity and all that. And that just wasn't Walt.
No.
He was like very to the point, he stood like very, very proper, very, and I get it, to showcase a hologram, they want more movement to kind of say, hey, this is how realistic we can make him move. So I can understand it. What really got me the most was the hair. The hair just kind of threw me off completely. He looks like a game show host with that hair. And I felt like what they did was, I felt like they took different features of him during different time eras. Like that was his hairstyle that he had back in the 20s and the 30s when he first started the studio. And then his facial expressions are more towards the 50, like the 50s, 60s.
Right. Like the New York World's Fair era, right?
Correct. Yes. And I do agree with you, Dre. I too noticed a lot of synchronization between the voice and the mouth moving, which that could be very well, fixable. But again, I'm very excited that they showcased him for this. And I do agree with you, fellas. I just don't want any one person to utilize this and abuse the system by showcasing their particular agendas and put Walt as the forefront of that.
Yeah. You have to respect this. You have to use it sparingly. Like with this little clip that we see, right? It's innocuous. It's nothing out of character for Walt Disney and his philosophy, right? So the 2 or 3 lines he recites here, spot on, perfect. But now that we have the technology, right, we have to be careful. So just because they were respectful in this particular instance doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way. So we have to be really, really cognizant of that. Another thing that I see a lot of fans talking about is like, well, Walt Disney didn't like this kind of thing. He didn't like being represented. Like, I think he was opposed to even creating like a bust of his head or whatever. And that's true. I've heard that too. But that ship has sailed a long time ago, fandom. Yeah. Like when Michael Eisner greenlit the partner statue, I mean, that was the beginning of it, right? I mean, it's over. Like we have multiple statues around the world of Walt Disney. I get the concern. I get that he didn't want to be like represented that way, but this is not too dissimilar to the statues that we already have and what have you. That like I said, that ship has sailed, and unfortunately, he didn't want it. But hey, this is where we're at right now. But what are your thoughts?
Well, and I asked a couple Imagineers this when I did the Dine with an Imagineer at Walt Disney World, because it had come to this was like 10, 12 years ago when I asked them, because they were at the time heavy on AAs. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if they actually showcased Walt Disney as an audio animatronic? They did it with Abraham Lincoln. They've done it with past and present presidents. They've done it with the Carousel of Progress. So why not do one of Walt Disney? And the Imagineers of what you had just mentioned, OG, they were considering on making an audio animatronic of Walt Disney, but because of the respect for him that he didn't want to be represented that way. But I guess they just kind of waited it out. And now that we're surpassed audio animatronics and now we're into virtual reality and we're into holographics and all that, then I guess this is now the time that they're starting to showcase him. But as I said, he may or may not have liked it, but I think that he would be very pleased with the technology. And I think that he would be somewhat humbled that it's about him.
Yeah. Well, real quick, Trey, just real quick, I'll pass over to you. This also provides an interesting sort of opportunity for even film, right? Like, remember the whole thing with Saving Mr. Banks. There's a lot of controversy about who do you cast to be Walt Disney. Well, now you can have Walt Disney. You don't need to do it. You don't need to go to a Tom Hanks to cast. You can actually have Walt Disney there. So that's also in the film side of things creates a huge opportunity. Go ahead, Ray. I do apologize, my friend.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. No, I mean George, you say waiting it out. I just think times have changed, and we live in a kind of a post Peter Cushing Tarkin world, right? When it was first introduced in Rogue One in 2016, it was pretty amazing tech, and people had people had issues with it, right? Because you're restoring somebody for this character, for this role and so forth. It's like, ooh, would Peter Cushing like that? And how does his family feel about that? And there were some really big questions about that. And now we see Walt Disney brought back to life, and not just an actor playing him, but it's him. It's he's really kind of there, and it's a brave new world as AI changes our world and our lives in profound ways, and we've seen that very recently, and people are kind of hesitant to the tech, and I understand it, and George, you talk about the partner statue. Yeah, I mean, I remember hearing Marty Sklar talk about it and how they put the partner statue in there just to not have a Ferris wheel in the middle of Disneyland at that location. They've had a number of promotions over the years, and one of those was, I believe, like a state fair kind of theme or promotion that they had, or celebration or whatever, and they had these Ferris wheels all over the place, and they had one right in the hub, and it's like, oh, we don't want that anymore. And ironic about DCA, but
I was just going to say that
story,
DCA
right? Yeah,
happens,
exactly. But they put the partner statue up there. I think everybody kind of wanted Walt back in some way, right? And to dedicate something to him, and now, I mean, he's speaking to you, and the implications for this, like I said, I mean, they're extraordinary. And I do agree with you, OG. I think if you use it sparingly, we're okay.
Right.
But it's like, George, you talk about a great point, I mean, do you espouse current values with them that may have not been, let's say, congruent
back
with
in the
maybe,
day.
Maybe his line of thinking back in the day, right? It's like, ooh, that's a really kind of interesting thing there. I think if you use a Walt Disney like this for like a promotional piece, even like with contemporary film product, I know people are gonna like scream at me when I say this, but like a throwback to the Wonderful World of Disney kind of stuff, where he's like, hey, look at this great film that we're actually premiering pretty soon or whatever. I think even that's okay, right? In sparing amounts. But again, it's like you could have him say anything, and that's got a lot of people kind of scared, and people reacted very viscerally to this. Some people were positive, a lot of people, I mean, it's just Twitter, but a lot of people were like, "Whoa, this is not cool." And I thought the response was very interesting.
But to give my full opinion, because I'm only a few hours away from this exhibit, so I think I'm going to be making a little road trip over there to actually see it for myself.
Road trip.
You should.
Yes.
And report back. We'll do a whole show on it, George. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Now I want to ask Dre, I want to ask you, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here. I'm just genuinely curious. If you don't know, it's totally fine.
Sure.
But with because you're our tech guy. You're the only one who knows anything about tech.
Okay. All right.
So my question to you with AI, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding as a layman that they basically take material. So they'll take like maybe 5 or 7 different speeches from Walt Disney, and they'll feed it into a computer, and the AI sort of analyzes that and uses it as a roadmap for going forward, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, my question to you is, how much of this Walt is someone actually like at Disney Studio, like tinkering and like creating it, and how much of it is just the AI computer spitting it back? Do you know, like, how much of that process is actually even someone altering it?
Well, doing research into it, there is definitely an art to it. It's not necessarily a science. It's not just
automatic.
Go into a black box, spits it out. There is a little bit of play there in order to have it all kind of flow right, and now obviously it's going to get better as these systems become more automated, maybe even using AI itself to do that, which is very, very interesting. But I think what was it? I was reading some interviews with some of the people who were working on Mandalorian, and bringing back Mark Hamill's voice, for example. Now, the original Mark Hamill voice that was utilized at the season finale, season 2 of Mandalorian, when Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi era actually made his glorious return, right? they had edited Mark Hamill's voice in order to make that happen for his appearance in, I believe it was Boba Fett. It was like episode 7, or if I'm not mistaken.
With little Grogu and all that.
They actually utilized AI to actually do that. And that was done via a process, as you described, right? They took a source collection, mainly his recordings from work that he did back in the, Mark Hamill did back in the 70s and 80s, put that into a computer, had the AI analyze it, and use that as a source for new content to be generated. From what I understand, it definitely is kind of a tug and pull. And there are certain parameters you can adjust in order to get a nice flow rate of dialogue to be spoken right there. But the potential is you could do that in real time, depending on how well that AI is actually set up.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. I was wondering that. I wonder how much of this is, like you said, science, and how much of it is art, right?
Yes.
So interesting stuff. We'll see how this goes. I mean, they said in that article that this is going to be touring until 2028. So it looks like this hologram is going to be in it for the long haul. I would like to see it brought to Disneyland on July 17th. It would be great to, look, it's a tradition here. Well, it was until last year, but a tradition. But it's a tradition where we have Walt's speech played at Disneyland. I think it would be incredible to maybe in the Disney Gallery, to have this hologram reciting the opening day speech.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really cool little nod on July 17th, or even that whole week or something, right? You have that. So that's interesting. The potential here is really limitless. So
now, do you fellas know, for the exhibit, is it going to go on for a certain period of time per location, or is it going to be a couple days? How does that?
It runs for a period of time and then it moves on, from what I understand. The New York Times might have the dates. I'm not sure.
Because I know the world premiere is February 18th.
February 18th. The exhibition runs until August 27th and then goes on tour in other North American cities, beginning with Chicago. A second exhibition will begin in April in Munich, actually. So that's very interesting. So yeah, I guess this runs till August until it actually moves on, and that's one of the reasons why it's
in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow, that's a long time. It's a long time.
It's a long time, and from what I understand, this catalog includes, like I said, thousands of pieces from the archives actually brought out. So, from what I understand, it's definitely worth seeing for sure. But yeah, I mean, this is the first iteration, and this is something that they, very well might have been working on for some time. But this is the version that is going to make its debut here. I can see an updated version making its debut in other places, but it's just a kind of a fascinating thing. Suppose you do have some abuse that actually goes on, right? And maybe having him say things that, maybe even the family doesn't like. Do the family have any rights to that? Can they actually file suit? I know they sold the rights to his likeness and his usage and so forth, but when you attribute words to a historical figure now with something so realistic, does that change the game potentially? There's some really kind of interesting arguments, definitely in the legal field, about AI technology. When can you sue AI? It's a very kind of interesting thing going on here. But
when Walt is in the park reciting the Splash Mountain rap.
Oh jeez.
Oh man, that's I don't know about that, but but potentially you could, right?
You could,
It's a very kind of it's a very kind of interesting world we live in. Can we expect this for other figures throughout Disney history?
I'd love to see the nine. I'd love to see the 9 old men. That'd be
that would be cool. That'd be fun. That'd be fun. But now here's the other thing too, and I hate to bring this up, but I think it just it bears repeating, and reminding. We were hearing a lot of rumors amongst our circles, right? That Bob Chapek did not like Walt Disney. He was very much against the idea of pushing Walt Disney out there, right? Kind of from what we heard, it was he wanted to move on, yada, yada, yada. Now, again, this is rumor. We don't know if he actually said these things. Is that necessarily true? I mean, this is this holographic Walt is definitely not a Bob Iger thing. There's no way they come up with the technology and everything since November. There's just no way. This is something that was in the works when Chapes was running the show.
Mhm.
But could have been even before JPEG, like the first
true.
wave of Iger.
It might have.
And then Iger. Again.
This was probably I would assume a multi-year project.
Yeah. But it's just interesting to me because we heard that he was kind of against it, and then I would assume that this is being worked on most of the time that he was there. So that's fascinating.
Yeah, I wonder whose decision it was to actually include this as part of this exhibit. That's a really interesting kind of point there.
And to know that it had to be ready for this, if this was the actually time frame that they were building this up. Because obviously, as OG said, it's not going to be like it's the Disney 100. Let's just pull this out of our pocket. And, it had to be established for quite some time.
I mean, I suppose, but maybe it was incorporated relatively last minute in this, right? And that's why it's not exactly 100% perfect. I mean, that is possible too.
Yeah, that's true.
It's an interesting. I think there's some interesting stories behind this for sure. I'd love to interview, one of these creators and say, hey, what was the inception of the idea? How how'd you approach this and all that kind of stuff?
What I'm actually waiting for is after Chapek's timestamp to not be able to talk about anything, and waiting for that very first interview.
Yeah.
Whoever interviews him, I would love to be that interviewer.
I want to hear from him, because all too much, especially in our fan community, we hear stuff like so-and-so executive says this or said that or believes this or believes that. And it's like the problem with that in our fan circles is that these people are hearing this stuff. It's like the game of telephone. Right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It goes through like 7 people before that person gets it. And it's like it gets lost in translation along the way.
Well,
right?
the narratives, they pick up bias, and that bias becomes institutionalized, right? It's very, very interesting you say this, OG, because I was just doing some research on the Titanic, and by eyewitness accounts and of how that actually sink occurred, a lot of people said it broke in two. And the official report commissioned by some committees that were looking, that did the investigative work post sinking, concluded that it did not actually split in two. And then when deep sea divers actually discovered it in 1985, well, come to find out, it did actually split in two. So how did that happen? Well, what is theorized, even though there was evidence to suggest that interior portions of the ship were actually above the surface and that were actually collected, it's theorized that people were so hell-bent on the idea that it was an unsinkable ship, that it went down this graceful way and so forth, and people correcting survivors of the incident even into like the 70s when they were still alive, because it was like, oh no, you don't know what you saw, it went down in one piece and whatever. Similar to this, it's like Chapek is seen as this like, Darth Vader like figure. It's like, oh, he couldn't do any good. It's not him. There's no way. He didn't do any good.
He wouldn't fit the suit.
It's like, well, that's not true. These things are far more nuanced, and these things are attributable to so many other people many times, as we talk about on this show. But that's how these kind of narratives become institutionalized, right? People just have this preconceived notion, and they pass it along each other, and that just becomes that person or that event or that figure, and
basically their identity.
Yeah, their identity. Exactly.
That's who they become.
The stuff starts to snowball, and before you know it, Chapek is flipping tables and saying, "I'm Walt Disney, damn it!" It's like, come on, it's like wildfire,
Right, exactly. Builds on itself, right?
So that's where Walt got his hair. It's Chapek's toupee.
There it is.
There it is.
See, that's a great subtle reference right there by these creators. But no, it's I would be very, very open, obviously, to find out from Chapek's point of view on some of this stuff and what he, really believed, what he was really advocating for, what he was really trying to do, and suss that out.
I have a feeling in time it's going to come out as a book form. I feel like he's going to write a book.
Oh, and we'll do a video on that book.
There's a book deal to be had there for sure.
I'm telling you, if this guy, if Chapes did an interview right now, it would do bonkers ratings. I mean, if he sat down with like, CNBC or any of these outlets, unbelievable amount of interest in that.
Which tells you how ironclad this NDA is, right?
It's ironclad.
Oh yes. Oh,
And we
yes.
won't hear for a long time if we ever do. I mean, Chapes is not really, that's the thing about Chapes. He really isn't like a public facing kind of person. He kind of didn't like that aspect of the job, I think. Christina Shockey, I think, was constantly trying to push him out there, and but it wasn't him, So would he even be interested in talking about it? I don't know.
If you had any chance of restoring your reputation at all, or telling your side of the story,
Well,
I
that's
can
true.
see why somebody might be motivated, or
Because then
he
that
might
would
just be a
make me
recluse.
think that, and I could be wrong and not to be judgmental about it, but if you don't have that opportunity to kind of clear that airspace, does that then make you look guilty?
No, that's
You know,
true.
in the sense that, not that you really have to owe anybody an explanation, because it's really no one else's business. That's his personal business of how he ended it with the company. But I were to think that when you're in the spotlight or the limelight for all the wrong reasons, and as many negative feedback and notions that poor guy has gone through since being CEO, that I were to think that to kind of shut everybody up, if you will, and tell like the real story when you actually have the opportunity to, I would take that opportunity.
I think a lot of people would, George. That's why I'm kind of like, maybe he does step back and just goes into the sunset with his millions, and that's it, right? Or maybe it's like, hey, you know what? This whole town has disparaged me. I get to finally tell my story.
Yeah.
Could happen either way.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. Like the last person that was really kind of ostracized in the Disney executive wise was Paul Pressler.
Yeah.
And then he ended up actually pretty soon thereafter moving to the Gap. He ran the Gap, and then he ran it into the ground.
Yeah,
and then,
they paid to remove him.
Yeah, and then I don't think he's done anything. I don't think he's done anything since. I could be wrong, but that's the last I've heard of it. It'll be interesting to see what Chapes does. Maybe he'll move on to something else. Maybe he won't. It'll be interesting. We'll see. But I want to thank you guys so much for coming on today, talking some holographic AI, Walt. The ramifications here are huge. They're absolutely huge. And it's one of those things too, where it's like, this thing could be the most beautiful tribute to this man that you could ever do. Yeah. And it can also be the biggest slap in the face insult. It's all about the execution. It's a fine line.
I'd like to know. Oh, go ahead.
Really quick, Drake, because me personally, one way to honor him in this format, I would love to see this actually come to the Walt Disney Family Museum. I feel like that would be like the quintessential, kind of like to finish up the touring, like after it's all said and done, have the home base be at the Walt Disney Family
That's
Museum.
An interesting question, George, because apparently people are saying that Diane wouldn't have liked this, and that's why I kind of would like to see people like Bob Gurr, Raleigh Crump, Floyd Norman, people who knew Walt, interacted with Walt, to actually see this and see if they like it, get their opinions on it. I think that would be a great thing. But George, I agree with you. If this is a sentimental or reverential thing, bring it to the Walt Disney Family Museum if they allow it.
Yeah, 100%.
But I'm sorry, Drake. What were you going to say?
That was it. I would like to see people who knew him see him now.
Yeah, that would be fascinating. Interesting. Well, Floyd Norman is not shy about his opinions. So I've seen some of his. Yes. He's very opinionated. Good for him. So maybe we'll hear something from him. You never know. But Dre, I want to thank you for coming on today, and George, thank you so much. Thank you both. We had a great conversation today about holographic AI Walt. But before we close out the show, Dre, if you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Hey, best place to find me is going to be at Vash Skies right down there. Just go ahead and type it in. Should pop up for all the
robust
discussion, as Christine Waysense McCarthy would say. Oh, gee, you got that job for me?
I do, and it's actually Walt. It's not an AI.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
There it is.
It's good to hear the man again. Yes, the biggest bargain of all. That is right. Walt, I believe he's talking about Orange Grove 55, the channel you're watching right now, which has some great shows in the pipeline, including my own, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
Perfect, perfect. And down below, we got Disney Family Man 23, George. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter as long as I have my account open at Disney George. You can also find me on the new podcast, A Walk with Walt. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base with Orange Grove 55, with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, thank you all for watching. Comment down below with your thoughts on holographic Walt, the hair, the smile, the overall look, the aesthetics, the ramifications, all of it. Comment down below. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.